Thank you, John. I feel at home for several reasons, but Shannon and Jason Hall, Daron Hall, Ginger Hall, my wife works for Shannon, and so I hear Shannon all the time, and I said just a minute ago, thank you for treating my wife nice, happy wives, and she makes my wife happy more than I do, so that's very, very, and neighbors as well, very close to home. So, and many others. I saw Warner Hassel and Kathy Gurley, who does some work with us as well. So I feel at home, and I've been born and raised in Nashville, and been in and out of this facility many times for things over the years, and happy to be back, trying to give some insight into what in the world the sheriff does in Nashville. My mom doesn't even know, so I'll do my best to try to walk through it. Kyle McMaster's in the back. He helps me. He will wave and say, hey, it's way close to time, so I appreciate Kyle taking a Sunday morning to come with me. But a couple little things. I think I need to explain how weird I am to allow you to understand kind of what we do and what I do and why. I grew up in a place called Bakertown, which is really Antioch to you. A little bitty piece of Antioch was called Bakertown. I went to Antioch High School. I did not like school. I wasn't good in school. I did not like to read. Still don't like to read much. But at 16 years old, I read the book Helter Skelter. And Helter Skelter, we all know, a lot of young people don't know, that it was the Charles Manson murders in California. And I know that we all know versions of the story, but the way I like to say it, how did this 5'2" man talk innocent women into murdering people? Now, there's a lot of facts, but I mean, that's really what it is. And so as a 16-year-old person who didn't like school, and I picked up this book and started reading, I could not stop reading. And it wasn't because I turned academic. It wasn't because I wanted a higher GPA. It wasn't to satisfy my mom and dad wanting me to be better in school. It was because I was scared to death. I didn't know that. I didn't really even understand why was I reading. And I just read this book. So it's taken me a long time to understand what did the book do to me. The book really wanted me, and it has led me on this lifelong journey to figure out why. Now, my wife likes whodunit. Most people do. Movies and books are really about whodunit. CSI figures it out every night on 45 minutes, right? Whodunit, and everybody goes to bed. I don't really care about who. I have never really cared about who. I was 16 years old. The first date I ever went on, I went to night court.
What?
True story.
I can't break.
For my 18th birthday, I asked for two things: the waiver to ride with a police officer and to go visit the prison. My parents, who had nothing of this interest, had no idea what they were raising, probably were freaking out about my interest, but I got to do both. And so I took off. I was very lucky. I was playing high school football one night. There was a really good guy on our team. It wasn't me, but the coaches came to watch him play. I had a really lucky, weird night. The next thing I know, I had an envelope in the mail, and it said, we'd like you to come visit this place called Western Kentucky University. No one in my family had been to college. I didn't really know if I was going to college. I didn't know where Bowling Green, Kentucky was. But when it said, if you want to come, we've got tickets to see Kool and the Gang, I said, I'm in. So I was being illegally recruited as a high school kid, and I was in. I drove to Bowling Green. I get up there, long story, but Kool and the Gang did their thing. I was with other players and all this, and so I didn't know what college was like. Believe it or not, the concert drained the electricity for the campus, so they had a brownout. And the brownout meant everybody on the campus just ran around all night. And so I said, I'm coming to this school. And I went to that school. But what happened to me was I was in a room like this with a bunch of people who knew what college was like. I did not, and I was sitting there, and I remember it was a football meeting early in that time, and the coaches walked in and said, what's your major? I had no idea what a major was. And so I just kind of nodded, and someone said, tell them undecided. I did that. But eventually someone said, your major is what do you want to study? And I said, I don't want to study anything. I wanted the brownout and Kool and the Gang. The reality was What do you want to study, man? What do you care enough about? If you care enough about it, then you have to read. If you're going to have to read, I need to find something I want to read about. And guess what that was? The same thing. Believe it or not, this kid who didn't like school went back to graduate school. Why? I wanted to figure out why people do what they do in this world that we're talking about. I left college, went and worked in jails in Kentucky for a year. I lived in hotels. I got to interview people who had just been arrested. It was the coolest job in the world. I was getting paid at 22 years old to drive in a hotel and go interview people who were in jail. In the state of Kentucky, they do not have bail bondsmen. It's the only state in the country that outlawed it. And I was what they call the administrative office of the courts. I was the arm of the court to go interview people who were arrested and carry that information to the judge to tell them whether they deserve to be released or not. But guess what? This kid who wanted to know why, I'm sitting right there asking you why. At 22 years old, I was the richest person in the world. Left there, came back to Nashville, went to work in the jails, and this is all I've ever done. It's all I've ever really wanted to do. I traveled around the world. I lived in Australia for a year working in prisons. I have been in every kind of jail, prison in the world that you can think of, I promise you. And I have the best job in the world because I still want to figure out why. I have been in it for 40 years. I know why. And you know why. It's not as complicated as we all make it. 9 out of 10 people who are arrested today are diagnosed with being addicted to a substance. 9 out of 10. 9 out of 10 people. When you ask someone, and by the way, I always say, we don't ask, are you addicted? They would all say no. But if you said, when's the last time you had something to drink? They would say, yesterday. What'd you have? 3 bottles of vodka. This is not happy hour and one more drink. This is an addiction, which is a disease. When I started in this line of work, we couldn't say that. We thought it was just say no, dare. That doesn't work, right? The addiction crisis in our country is 90% of the time at the root cause of why someone goes to jail. I was mentioned earlier, I was the president of the American Correctional Association. This has been 10, 12, 15 years ago. Which one of the perks you get, which is a terrible job, by the way, but one of the perks you get is a 2-year presidency. You get to travel internationally 1 time a year to represent the United States of America. That's the coolest thing in the world. My wife and I are going to go that year. I was going to be the president. I get to go to Belgium. Every country was going to be represented, modern country in the world. We're sitting in a room like this, and we were going to get to stand up. I'd never done this, and you're going to say, my name is Daron Hall. I'm the president of the American Correctional Association. I'm from the United States of America. That sounds so cool to say right now. I was so excited. I was on the plane practicing in the bathroom. I thought, I'm going to stutter, and my only chance to do this, what's it going to be? And so here I go. I stand up. I didn't stutter. I got it right. Every modern country in the world was in the room. We had funky things like this on, but it was helping us translate everyone's different language. So I did it. I felt good. But when I did it, I felt people smile, giggle, point. I've often said I felt like my zipper was down because I felt like they knew something I didn't know. And I felt weird because I didn't know why. 2 or 3 days later, a dinner, a glass of wine or two through those 4 days, you understand why. Every country in the world laughs at us. Every country in the world says we over-incarcerate people. You've heard that before. I've heard it all my life. We over-incarcerate people. So I thought, well, that's not totally unusual, but why? What is it? This country gets very hung up on sensational things like race. Race is a problem. It is disproportionate in jails and prisons, but it's not the reason they laugh at us. We over-incarcerate people in our country unlike any other modern country in the world. And you know why? We put people who are in jail in our country every day for being mentally ill. Every day. 35% of the people arrested today in every city, including yours, will be diagnosed mentally ill. We're the only country in the world that would take a naked man from the park who is singing to Elvis that's flying over and take him to jail. Nowhere else in the world does that. Every other country sees a naked man in the park playing a guitar, singing to elephants or Elvis, and says, you need help. We say, oh my God, get that thing out of here. My kids can't see a naked man. And how do we solve the problem? We call 911. It's not their fault. 911 in our country does what they have as the only resource available. It's got blue lights. It's not their fault either. They get a lot of blame. They arrive on the scene. What do we want? We want the naked man gone. How do we solve the naked man being gone? Where does the naked man go in our country? There is one place. In the 60s in the United States, President Kennedy and the country promised to deinstitutionalize the mental health hospitals. In the 60s, we promised we were going to tear these institutions down because it stigmatized people who were ill. That's all true, by the way. We should have torn down the hospitals. But what happened was, and I can show you chart after chart, it's a perfectly descriptive way. Every bed that was torn down was replaced with a bed. We did not deinstitutionalize the hospitals. We reinstitutionalized the people in a different place called jails and prisons. Bed for bed. Every bed torn down was built in another institutional environment. In our own city, I grew up here. I can tell you, if you lived in Nashville, you know what I'm talking about. Right outside on Murfreesboro Road and Donaldson Pike, we had a thing called Central State Hospital. I grew up about a mile away from that. Huge institution, huge hospital. As a kid, I'd ride around with my parents. I remember them saying, those people are sick. They weren't sick like I was with a cold, but that's what I understood. They were sick in some way. That hospital was one that President Kennedy and the country said can't be here. Let's tear it down. We tore it down. It is now Dell Computer. You know, I can show you, I can walk you there. Those beds were torn down. Guess what you built? I have 4,000 of them built exactly to replace those beds. I oversee 4,000 beds that the naked man goes to when he or she is taken out of the park. Every city in this country does it that way. And the reason they were laughing at me in Belgium wasn't because of race. By the way, just to get this out of the way, Nashville's 58% white. Today, the person who is arrested is 50% of the time going to be white. So there's 8% of the time that it doesn't match up with our racial breakdown. That's not good. It's not perfect, but it's 35% of the time you're putting a mentally ill person in an institution that you promised you weren't going to do. And no other country does it. So if you're sitting in the room in Belgium and you introduced yourself as the President of the United States and you said, and we no longer put mentally ill people in jails and prisons, they won't laugh at you. Your country will look like theirs. I didn't know that then. I didn't really understand back then what in the world is going on. Our jail and prison system had really improved in our country since the 80s because we no longer ran unconstitutional facilities. We realized as a country you got to treat people humanely who are incarcerated. That's great. But guess what? The people who are incarcerated aren't getting the help they need if they're really mentally ill, if they really are in the system to receive mental health care instead of a criminal justice system. And when you realize we're the only country doing it that way, you start going, well, why? And you kind of figure out that the Vietnam War in the 60s took the funding. And we have never had leadership, president, governor, mayors, who've ever said, let's take it away. I hate the defund the police argument. It's a stupid argument. But its logic is right. Right? You shouldn't have sheriffs and police chiefs dealing with people who were not trained and very good with dealing with. We should have a system that takes the naked man out of the park that doesn't get punished and sentenced in a criminal justice system. So if you repurpose the money, if you came up with a better way of living in our country with the money, that's okay. But I don't know, I like to compare to marriage in a lot of different ways. I cannot go up to my wife and accuse her of something and hope we can figure it out. You don't say defund the police because you don't know what you're doing. Let's figure out a better way to do it. Why don't we back up and say, wait a minute, we should never have been asking criminal justice systems to deal with this problem. In the 60s, you promised you weren't going to do that as a country. We just never built the replacement. And the replacement is a mental health system that we still do not have. And think what we do. Today, when you take the naked man out of the park, you not only reinstitutionalize him, which you promised you weren't going to do as a country, but you also double stigmatize him. He's now ill and criminal. Good luck on the next job. And it's just a reoccurring cycle. I left Belgium, I came back home, and I was somewhat embarrassed because I've been in the system, somewhat interested. How do we do something different? What can we do? You guys know this, I've been in here a long time in Nashville, and I can say this. We were changing mayors about every week at the time. And I couldn't figure out, how do you get a system to change for you to help you being the sheriff? And the reason I say that is I house every arrestee there is in this city. Every person arrested for every crime drops at our door. And we are the one who live with the people who are mutilating themselves every day. We are the people who get to watch people eat feces daily. We are the people who watch someone dive off their bunk into the metal toilet to drown themselves. I'm not sensationalizing. I don't have to make up stories. But it's my job to tell you that, tell the public that, tell our country, we got to do better. And so, oddly enough, as we were going through this time in my life, I was trying to figure out what is going on with the mental health crisis. Why is it coming to the front door of the jails? The reality is there's no alternatives. And the reality is the countries that are laughing at us do it much better. And I was at a weird part because I feel like, and there's something to remember, police chiefs are good people. Their jobs are very dangerous. Figuring out who did it is dangerous. It's not hard. It's not hard. Most people who commit crime aren't smart at the time they commit them. We all know, most of the time you're addicted. Most addicted people aren't smart, right? I mean, murder is a crime of passion. 82% of the time it's someone who really cares a lot about you. I'm sorry, a lot of people don't care a whole lot about me or you. There's a small circle. Figuring that out's not hard, it's dangerous. Breaking the cycle of why is very hard. And so when a person shows up at the front doorstep charged with a crime, our job is to figure out why, what can we do about it? That's what I think our job is. What can we do to help reduce the chance that he or she ever does it again? And so here we were in a city where I had been laughed at. I'm in charge of this system where everyone's being dropped off at the front door. And I quickly learned that police chiefs' jobs are dangerous, but not hard. What I mean by that is they arrest someone, it's about 45 minutes an hour, backseat police car, let's take you downtown, drop you off, hand me the paperwork, here's the person, fix it. I respect what they do. They show up on court dates, 6 months later, walk in a courtroom, Your Honor, I was there the night that he was driving drunk, and yes, sir. That's really the only involvement a police officer has with that actual case, right? It's important, very important part of it. The judge's time with the defendant's about 2 seconds, exaggerated, 6 seconds on a good day, right? The district attorney's job, maybe some hours preparing, but the actual time the district attorney spends with the defendant, the person, limited, very limited time. Public defenders are great people. Lawyers, I see a lot of lawyers, God forbid. There's a lot of lawyers who spend a lot of time with their clients. Jails and lawyers spending time with that individual, not a ton of time. We live with the people. So we owe you the full explanation of what's going on. We have the knowledge of the deterioration of a person who is sick. And I don't expect these people who I just talked about to know that. I'm just saying, but it is my job to tell you, if this is what you want to do as a society, we can keep doing it. But if you want to change it, as I think we should, most other countries shouldn't be laughing at us. If you take the 35% of the people out of the jail and prison system in our country, there is not a person in the world going to laugh at us. Our numbers are literally where theirs are. So my point was, if we're in a city like this and I'm housing the people who are ill, and I'm watching, not me personally, I'm watching what's going on, I owe you that conversation 10 years ago. And so we were in a weird time in Nashville. We also were looking to replace a building downtown. It was the Criminal Justice Center. Many, many people know that's where every arrestee goes. That building was built in '82. It was out of date the day it was built. 30 years later, it's time to replace it. Forget everything I was just talking about, programs and mental health and addictions. You need to replace your jail, your booking room, your center of the criminal justice system. So I was fascinated, interested, and frustrated that the way we're doing it's not helping, it's not working. I wouldn't look to see for two years. I wanted to know, why is a mentally ill person coming to jail? What's the most likely reason an ill person, ill being mentally ill, at least diagnosed, what is the number one reason? What's a crime they're committing? Spent 2 years doing this, and you study the people who are coming in that were ill, and you find out that of the top 5 charges a person comes to jail for that's ill, 2 of the top 5 aren't even new charges. Failing to go to court. Shame on you, you should go to court. But that's not a new crime. Failing probation. It's not a new crime. It's you should have done better, should have made probation. By the way, I can't make probation in Nashville. I can't either. Parking, driving, keeping a job, living here with a person who's off their medication for 6 months is not going to work. Why are we putting people who are diagnosed ill on a program, probation that was built in the 50s, very, very hard to manage? You know the success rate? A person who's ill completes probation, anybody want to guess? 9% of the time. 91% of the time they're going to fail probation. Why would you ever put a person on probation? And then guess what? They violate probation by not completing it. Now, they are naked in the park singing a song, so the police officer pulls up. The police officer in this example is the most liberal, can I say that word, progressive, I don't care what word you want to use, sympathetic, and the police officer wants so much to help you that he or she has a bed to take you to right now. You know what? I can't do it. You know why? There is a warrant for your arrest for probation violation. Even if you had a bed, which we don't, even if you had a liberal police, progressive authority, the criminal justice system has an expectation you must meet. You must go to jail. So we're creating this system that's not successful. We're also have no beds. You have nowhere to take them to. So if you wanted to take the person out of the park, there's nowhere to go. We all as a society, me too, I want the naked man out of the park. I do, you do, we should. But when the only alternative to take he or she is in a police car, they're going to end up in a jail setting. They're going to go to court and get sentenced for 10 days or whatever the deal is for indecent exposure, and then we're going to release them in 10 days and wonder why they come back. It makes no sense. So I was at a weird time. We were changing mayors and cities, and it was all going through all this, and I had this weird thought. What if we could do it differently? We're going to build a new building called the Downtown Detention Center. What if I wanted to do something different? I wonder if I could go get the city council. Anybody on the council in here? I hope not. My dad was on the council. I can beat up on the council. Getting 40 people to agree on what to do on something that's never been done or a new idea. Shannon, good luck. I've never seen someone do it. Warner Hassel, if you've ever done it, I've never seen you do it either, but it's not easy. So I had a choice to make. I thought I wanted to do something different. I need a new jail to book everyone who's coming in, but I don't want them to go to jail. When I say I want someone to tell me that person's needs, the why, and I want them to go get what they need, not what we've done for 50 years. So I went to the council, I went to the mayor and said, I need to replace that building right across the street. It's $200 million to do it. I need to replace it because we've got to have a new one. It's been there for 40 years. They determined what the cost was going to be. We were changing mayors this is between Dean and Barry, I think. So we got agreement that we needed a new one. We got agreement to give me the money to go build a new one, and then I took off and built something else. And there's a lot of complications about how that works. Timing helped me a little bit, but I didn't need any new money. I'm talking about give me what it takes to replace what I got. All right, so I got the money to replace what we have, and then I went in a room full of people who work with and for me and experts who know how to build buildings and said, I want to build 2 buildings. I want to take the money they gave me to do the way we've always done it, I want to do it differently. I want a different address. I want a different name. I want a different building. I took a floor of the jail that you and I would have paid for anyway and built a behavioral care center right next door. So what that means is when the naked man is now arrested and brought to the front door of the booking room, as you would have called it, the first person they meet is a master's level mental health clinician. We're the only jail in America that does it. What does that mean? That means the first thing they want to know is what is your mental health acuity level? What are your charges and what can we do about it? If it is determined that your arrest was really because there is no alternative for mental health, then the mental health system, which is built right next door, you're diverted directly into the hands of what we call the mental health co-op. It is called a behavioral care center. I like the word decriminalizing because the crime really isn't the reason you're here. I could give 1,000 of these, but this is the one that hits me closest to home. And this is early in the phases of on a napkin. What are we going to do? I don't want to build the same old building. What can we do? I was at home on a Saturday night. My phone rings. It's 7 or 8 years ago now. Hey, Daron, it was a lawyer here in town, a criminal defense attorney who was a good friend of mine. We had kids the same age. I hadn't seen him in a while, but our kids grew up together playing ball. Hey, Daron, do you remember the so-and-so family? Remember on the Little League team? No, I don't. Yeah, you do. He was the outfielder on the baseball team. Okay, well, I don't know, but yeah. He says, I'm at their house. It's a Saturday night. And I said, yeah. He said, their son that was on that team is 24 today. My son would have been 24, obviously, on that same day. He's 30 today. And that son is bipolar. And that son has thrown the stereo down the steps at the house, and I'm over here trying to help him. Can you help me get him, the son, committed to Middle Tennessee Mental Health Center, the hospital, if there is one, out here in Donaldson. It's no bigger than that table for the entire state of Tennessee. And so he's a friend of mine, so I can talk a little bit different with him. I said, you've lost your mind. I mean, I have people right that time cutting themselves. I have people at the facility, some 3,000 inmates, that time, trying to end their life and anyone else around them, believing there are monsters in the room or going through any sort of mental health disorder that is far more significant than throwing a stereo down the steps. And this guy who's a lawyer, who's a nice guy, is asking me, can I help him get a 24-year-old in front of the line to go? And I said, that would never happen. Even if we all wanted to, you couldn't do it. You can't get the people who are very sick there. This person needs help, but it won't be at Middle Tennessee. We hang up. I wouldn't talk this rudely to anybody else, just so you know. He's a friend. He calls me 2 hours later, Saturday nights, about midnight. Daron, I'm at the house still. I've come up with an idea. If we have him arrested, 24-year-old son, we have him arrested, he'll be seen by the nurse when he gets there, won't he? I was asleep when the phone rang. I sat up on the side of the bed. I can still remember this. And I said, as a dad, I'm not going to answer your question. The answer is, of course. But you're asking me at midnight to say, let's do it. I hang up. Of course, 2 hours later, the phone rings. Daron, he's in booking. Would you make sure she sees him or he sees him? So I went to bed, get up the next morning. I couldn't get it off my mind. I didn't remember the family, but I traced down the mother. She met with me for 4 years. And several things are important here. She was the face of the problem to me. She was the mother of a 24-year-old son who needed something. And you know what we went to? We as a society, lawyer in the room, had him arrested. Brought to me as in our system. What did I do? Handcuff, photograph, fingerprint, let's go, sit over here, put on a jumpsuit, let's go to the court, judge, Your Honor, you plead guilty, how you plead to disorderly conduct, yes sir, 10 days, let's go. I mean, thousands of people a week. And he's just right in line. So she represented to me one, if not many, of the problems. And she helped put what we've done kind of in perspective for me. Along the way, as we were building this building, a couple things were important. We wanted a different address, a different phone number. We didn't want her to get out of bed in the middle of the night and go get her son from jail. If you've ever been to pick someone up in jail, it's not easy. You can't just walk in there. It's a very restrictive, unfortunately, very difficult place to do anything but feel bad about the person in and the families that are in part of this. And if I believe, and I hope you believe, that the person's ill, why would you want that? Wouldn't you want that to feel different? So we wanted a different door to walk in. If you walk to the behavior care center right now, it's just like that door. You walk in just like this. There are no locks on the door. There are 60 beds, 30 for men, 30 for women. When they go there, they do not have crimes. The district attorney, one of the best things that I did was I went with a newly elected district attorney who is still there today. I don't make political endorsements or anything else. I will make a professional endorsement. Without a district attorney who's willing to think outside the box, I couldn't do it because I don't have the authority to erase what you've done. The district attorney has the authority to not prosecute. So I took him to lunch. I said, I need a favor. If we put people in a behavioral care center, I don't believe it's a crime. I think it's a mental illness. Can't we treat it that way? That means, can you ignore the crime they were brought down here on? Will you? He first said yes for misdemeanors in a few limited cases. I didn't buy his lunch, but I took him to lunch a bunch. And I said, at some point, I said to him, the concrete's being poured. Don't make me look stupid. And we're friends. And what I really meant was, you can't be so limited that we can't have anybody in here. You can find reasons to say no to every case. Today, I'll tell you, half of the people in a behavioral care center have felonies. A long way from going to lunch, saying a few cases. They've been extremely supportive. When they go into the mental health center, they do not have a crime. When they leave there, they don't owe the courts, the probation system, anything. They've completed what we believe is important. When they go back out, they don't owe or fail to appear or violate probation. You know why? They're not on it. Because we believe it was an illness, not a crime. And we're trying to decriminalize what is the illness. Couple little notes. The mother, along the way as we were meeting, she was at my office years ago, 2 or 3 years into this, and I was walking in the hallway, and I just said to her, how's he doing? Just she and I walking. We'd had a great meeting, and I just thought it was the right thing to ask, and I said, how's he doing? And she said, he's doing great. And I felt so good about that. We took a couple steps. We were still building the building. And then a couple of steps, and she just burst. And I felt terrible. And I think it was a closet. I just opened the door, come in here. I mean, I just felt terrible because I didn't want to put her in that situation. And she said, he's doing great, but he can't get a job. You know why he can't get a job? Got a probation officer now, got a court date, got a criminal history. And the mother, she didn't say these words, the mother is the reason he can't find a job. The lawyer sitting in the house is the reason he can't find a job. The people who thought they were using a system to help him, called the criminal justice system, compounded the problem. And I don't blame her at all. I asked Kyle, who's with me a lot, this question, because it always feels weird what I'm about to say, but it is true. I got to know her very well, the family, of course. Here's a weird thing I want you to remember. They could afford the hospital. Not the mailbox, not the hospital bed. I got to realize and know they could afford the hospital. That's not something they throw on you. I don't want you to feel awkward about it. What I want you to understand is I don't care how much money you have. This is not a resource problem. It's not have and have-nots. It's not that poor people or rich people. No one. You can't get your 24-year-old son in a bed for mental health at 10 or 11 o'clock or in the morning or night or 2 o'clock in the afternoon. There are no such things. But it's important to hang on to that I don't want it to feel like certain places do it differently. A few cities do it differently, not well. We finished building the building. We have a jail just like every city. Right next to it, at separate address, separate phone number, separate entrance, separate everything. We have people, 30 men, 30 women, who are being treated for their illness. They were originally in contact with the police. A couple things to know. I always get this out of the way. People always ask me, how successful is it? And you tell me what success is. I'll tell you some things that may or may not matter to you. If you get arrested in this country today, 75% chance you're going back to jail. It's every city, I've seen those numbers since grad school. It's not changed. 75% of the time, if you go to jail, you go back. That's true. If you add the flag that person also has an illness called mental health, it's 90. All right? That shouldn't shock us. 75% is the average person going to jail. A person, if you add disorders to their life, much less likely to be successful. So what happens? They go back to jail. So 90% of the time, a person who is mentally ill that has been arrested is going back. Today, the behavioral care center that we have, 22% of the time they go back. I don't care about that. That's not what we built it for, but it matters to people. Here's what I want you to know. When the 22% of the time are naked again in the park, and the police show back up, drive back downtown, when you get to the front door, the assessment of your mental health acuity and your charges are evaluated, and you're moved right back to mental health, if that's what you qualify for, if that's what your needs are. And I don't consider any of that failure, right? Because if it weren't for that room, you're going to put he or she back in the jail anyway. They got to go somewhere. And so we were having a group just a month ago, Leadership Nashville, which everybody's heard of, comes around once a year. They do tours in the jails and tours and programs and all that. It's really a fun day or good day. We do a lot of it. On this particular day, I was at my offices across the river, and I came back. I do every year and wait and welcome to the sheriff's office. We do that, and we tour them through, and we do that. So on this particular day, I'm standing outside the behavioral care center. We're going to tour them through there too, waiting on the bus to arrive. It's 9 o'clock in the morning. And all of a sudden, I see the bus kind of coming, big Greyhound bus, whatever it is. And all the leaders of Nashville are going to be on there. It's an important day, and our staff are anxious to do their thing. So as I'm standing there waiting, I can see the bus coming. One of the women who run the behavioral care center and the woman who runs our jail was standing beside me because they were going to be tour leaders. So as the bus is approaching, I hear, "Oh God, there's Kevin." Had no idea what they were talking about. I didn't know who Kevin was. Come to find out, right across the street, walking right towards us, was a completely naked man. 9 o'clock in the morning, headed right toward us, and here comes the bus. Now, if I'm honest with you, my instincts are to do what we all do when your in-laws or someone pulls in a driveway. Hide all the dirt. Oh my God, dress up the house. My wife cleans the house before the cleaning person comes to clean the house. I don't understand. But I had the instinct. I wanted to hide it. I wanted to get rid of, I don't mean the person, but I wanted to polish it that we're doing great.
Okay.
And I remember the bus is coming. This woman's name's Carla, and I said, "Get Kevin some clothes." Now, bus is dropping off. Kevin gets clothes. Things are going on. We do our 30 minutes worth of tours. We do all of our stuff. We're sitting back down with the group. We're talking about questions and answers. So in the meantime, what they didn't know and what came to me was that Kevin had been released from behavioral care center 6 weeks ago. Kevin had been released and was knocking on the door, coming back to the door, wanting to know how John was doing. Can I participate in group? You have any clothes? Can I have a bite to eat? In that order, as best I understood it. So Leadership Nashville was here. And I did not expose, no pun intended, Kevin to the group, but I told the story. And I said, I want you to remember this. Kevin should have had clothes on. I wish he did. I wish Kevin well in whatever happens. But I've been in this line of work for 40 years. There has never been a person walk back up the street, go to the front door of the other building, and say, "Can I have anything? Help, food, clothes, rent." Here's a man who felt completely comfortable, which, by the way, is a regular occurrence, but most of the time they have clothes on.
Dude.
Walking back up to say, "Can I have this?" We give them 3 weeks of medication when they leave. It's not in a pocket. It's on a card. They get to come and go and do whatever. My point to you is that's not failure to me that Kevin didn't have clothes on. He was going back to get services that he can't get in other places. And unfortunately, jails are never a place people view to go back to get help. So I know we got hustle here. So we have a facility. It opened during COVID. That was a terrible time. We've been running 30 beds women, 30 beds men for the entire time. And we're the only city, I think 61 jurisdictions have been here. The director of a behavioral care center, I was just meeting with her Friday morning, and I teased her. I said, "You're the highest paid tour guide in America," because we're doing so much. Just people want alternatives, and I'm not suggesting this is the solution. It is decriminalizing what I believe the next person who goes to Belgium won't be laughed at, because people shouldn't be in jail systems that are really ill, and other countries are much better than us. So, may I have a few minutes? Yes, sir. Is there some time, John? Okay.
How much do you think the privatization of prisons and the prison industrial complex have self-interest in not offering alternative facilities?
All right, full disclosure, I went to work for CCA in 1990. No one knew what those initials were, probably even you. Most people didn't. It was based here. I worked for Faye Thomas. Anybody know that name? I worked for a government official who was involved with corruption, went to jail. Not a bad person, but CCA was based here, started in 1990. I went to work there for 3 years. I thought it was a cool opportunity to learn about jails and prisons. Remember that I'm the weird guy who wanted to learn as much as I could. I learned a ton, not about finances and corporate America. I don't care about that part at all. It's not me. I wanted to know, do they know a better way of treating people? And guess what? They did. You know why? Back then, they had the ability, they being a company, to go hire people to do different things. I was over programs, and I wanted to start a treatment unit, addiction treatment unit. I traveled to 3 states because that's where I read was the best ones: South Carolina, Arizona, and Alabama back then. I went to Alabama. I met this man named Bob Kennington, amazing man. He'd robbed multiple banks on a heroin junket years and years ago. He cleaned his life up, changed his life, and started a program helping men turn their lives around in jails and prisons. So I love this guy. And so CCA told me they wanted to hire someone to do better treatment than everywhere else back then that was going on. I came back and I said, I've got this guy, Bob Kennington. Corporate company said, we don't hire ex-offenders. And I said, then you don't really have the best program. He's the best I've seen. They eventually hire him. He goes on to do better things. My point back then was they have the ability to make decisions quicker than the government does. Where the government fails in privatization, always, they don't oversee a private company. You cannot give away that responsibility, right? Like them or not, the thing going on in Trousdale, someone needs to say, where is the state of Tennessee? Daily. So, it doesn't impact, there's a larger political conversation nationally, lobbying for bills that make sentences longer. There's a lot of that going on. My experience in my world is the government's responsibility is to figure out who needs to be in jail, not a private company. I don't believe mentally ill people belong in jail. I don't care who lobbies for it. And so I don't disagree. I don't like to get off into the political part of private versus public because the public system isn't good either, at all. Right? 98% of the people I know work in, and by the way, they didn't laugh at me because I ever worked in a private company. That was 1990. They laugh at us because the government in our country will not build what it needs to take care of people who are ill. So that's my focus. It's not private public. Let's get the country to realize you need to do something that helps people who are ill. I'm not favor or disfavor private. I'm saying we need as a society to realize a naked man doesn't belong in jail. That's what I think. Yes, ma'am.
You've got 60 beds.
Yep.
How many do you need?
Great question. You have 60 beds. How many do you need? I had a whole lot of people ask me this going into it. Why'd you build 60? Here's a fascinating stat. By the way, graduate school told us that your jail is supposed to look just like your community. Remember the race disproportionate thing? It's supposed to be a microcosm, look exactly like your community. It will never do that. You know why? 80% of the people in jail are men. Always will be. Every county, every jurisdiction is 80-20. So just know, 80-20 men. But if I came to you and said, give me everyone who is diagnosed mentally ill in that 80-20 system, 50% of the people diagnosed are women. Now, the experts in mental health have educated me over the years, and I believe everything they're saying. They believe, and with evidence, that women are more honest. So if these 2 people were being booked in the jail right now, and I'm saying, hey, have you ever felt sad and bad? Have you ever went to the hospital, been institutionalized, better harmed yourself? You're not going to tell me as likely as you might say, well, I was down one time when XYZ happened and my mother had someone come talk to me. I mean, my point to you is the honesty in gender shows up. And so we built 30 beds. The reason that was the number is the number of people coming in the door, booking into the jail system, and how long we were going to treat them in this environment is what dictated the number. Because the mental health experts told me, do not build a long-term care facility. That's not the job. Don't do that. So we had to, it's under a licensure, but we had to build it where 30 days is not a kick you out date, but 30 days is the goal. So that, along with the numbers, dictated how many beds to build. It's a fascinating thing. Here's the thing you may not know. 5 years ago in Nashville, 100 people a day were being arrested. And we house everyone who comes off the street. 100 people a day 5 years ago, right before COVID. Today, 60, and it's not moving. So 60 people a day. I just saw this week. In 2018, the police department stopping a vehicle, I'm not preaching here either way, stopping a vehicle, 180,000 a year. This year, 30,000 stops. What I want you to know is the number of people coming in the door since we built the building has down dramatically, just coming off the streets. Are the needs different? No. But the number coming off the streets, and a lot of people wouldn't know that. Nashville's booming, a lot of bachelorette parties, but there's not as many people coming to jail as there used to be. So just know that I don't know if that's good news or bad news. I just say that because it's often asked of us, what is the population? Yes, ma'am.
Is that because the police aren't arresting because of the transient? And also, the mentally ill people, are their constitutional rights violated when they are arrested? And do you do any constitutional education class?
I'm going to ruin church if I start talking about all these at one time.
I love it.
And it may be evening church before we finish. Couple things. Their constitutional rights, a great question. I'm not a lawyer, but I live with a bunch of them at my work, right? The reality is the individual has to accept and be willing to get care. I can't force him or her to go there, right? But go back to the DA. The relationship that was so important to me is if the DA is saying, I will nolly, I think that's a fancy word for expunge and ignore the crime if you go over there, is a big help. But it can't make them go. So their constitutional right is, by the way, they also have to be declared to be competent. They cannot, excuse me?
Can you put them in jail?
Different issue though, yeah. I mean, well, there is a crime for being naked in the park though. There is a crime for being indecent in the park. I'm not arguing it, I'm just saying that's what's used as what brings them to the system. And then, but your question's a really good one because I wanted to say, I don't mean Daron, I wanted a mental health expert to say, you need help. Let's get you help. Well, if you don't agree you need help, and by the way, a lot of times they don't, right? That person's got to be willing to go get help. And what I wanted was leverage. And the leverage that's used, and I say leverage is the wrong word, is look, if you go there, your criminal activity is not on record. It's also not a part of what you're going to be. Here's what else is fascinating that most people said would never happen. And I had a bunch of lunches to go to make it work. You know who decides when you go home? Not a judge, not a sheriff, not a DA, not a police chief. It's the mental health. Are you stable enough to leave? If you violate by not completing the program, the original arrest for what we call indecent exposure can be lodged against you. But if you complete that, the arrest never occurs. And the people who get to decide when you're stable are the mental health people, because guess what? Judges don't know. I don't know. But we'll sentence you to 10 days for being naked thinking that's going to help. Has no idea. But over there, they may say 18 days and you're stable enough to be transitioned to a home or to another place. Really was important. Yes, sir.
You got 60 beds, and so as soon as they fairly full, I don't know, but when someone comes in and let them full, they don't have choice.
Yeah, so see, one of the things that's interesting about that question is, if we were booking 100 people a day, I'd be worried about. We've never exceeded the number and the need for that, because keep in mind, 60% of the, 100 we're getting arrested, 60% is what we're getting today of that 100. If it ever gets back to 100, I think that'll be a really good question. People ask me, can you expand the program? Sure, we could do more of it. It's easier and cheaper to build, much cheaper, by the way, to build than jail beds, right? All jail beds are built like El Chapo's in there, right? They're expensive. It's hard because you want them secure. A treatment bed is not. We don't lock everything down. And by the way, we've not had one person in 5 years walk out the door. We've not had one person assault another person, go across the street and put that same person in a jail setting. Very significant problems, usually. If you're suffering from anxiety disorder, which is very common, jails are built with 44 men and no windows. I'm men as in if I use the gender. So the point of that is it's not designed to do anything. You go into the treatment center, the environment is in itself de-escalated. And we see that every day. So we hope it gives them a better opportunity when they leave. Yes, ma'am.
What about violent crime and mental illness?
Great question. What about violent crime and mental illness? Remember when I talk fast. I'm from Antioch. I usually don't talk this fast. But the question is a good one. Every morning, every day, but every morning at 7 o'clock in the morning, the people who were arrested, their mental health acuity, which is done by the mental health master's level person all night long, and the district attorney and the public defender and my staff sit at a table every morning and go, here are the 17 people, here's their crimes, here's their mental health acuity, and here's their willingness to go. All of those got to be checked. The DA in this city is the only person who can say you're able and eligible to go, because that crime is important to them on prosecution. Here's their policy, which I love. This was talking them into helping us with some felony cases. If I throw the stereo down the steps of your house, that can be an aggravated assault. That's a felony, right? So what the DA's policy is if Jason is my victim, I threw the stereo at him and my next door neighbor. He was terrified. He called the police. The police show up. The police make the arrest. It's aggravated assault against me. They bring me to jail. They get me to the booking room. We do this assessment. I'm a schizophrenic, whatever level of this situation. My crimes are felonies, very serious. In this assessment that's done every morning, those things are weighed out. The DA policy is they notify the victim. Here's the situation. Daron Hall, aggravated assault, you had him arrested last night. There is an alternative to incarceration that decriminalizes him by putting him in the behavioral care center. As the victim, are you willing for me to do that? If they say yes, 82% of the time, yes. Because you know why? Most of them want them to get help, fixed. Jail doesn't do that. So what's fascinating is the violent crimes, and I'm not talking about murders, mass murders, that would never be, the DA would never do that. A lot of mental health crime is domestic. It's the son throwing this. It's terrified brothers. It's neighbors. But it's very close to home, and there's no alternative, and a lawyer's calling to find, can we get him arrested to get it fixed? And so you see that. And when it gets to a violent crime, I think the policy is really good. It's their policy. I call, or the DA calls, are you okay? 82% of the time, the victim wants him or her to get something other than jail. So I hope that proves to help down the road. Yes, ma'am.
Can you speak to the drug problem? You say 90%.
Wow. So I've been in a long time. The most significant thing we've ever dealt with is the opioid crisis, no doubt about that. In my lifetime, your lifetime, it is heroin. I know y'all know that, but the reality is in the 60s we called it heroin. Now it's different because it's in everybody's house. I have a 30-year-old son who tore his shoulder up. I took him to get the surgery.
What?
This has been 7, 8, 9 years ago, kind of the front end of that. Stopped at Walgreens, 84 oxycodone. Pain medicine to have his shoulder, right? I want you to take one of these before you get physical therapy. I want to take you one before you go to bed. Make sure you get sleep. Make sure you can do, no. I'm not doing that. I'm not a drug expert, but I'm not doing that. As a dad, we will do what you need. I stood in the room with the physical therapist ordering him, you need to take one before you come. We're not doing that. Much different today, you wouldn't get 84 pills in a bottle. The problem is 84 pills to a 26-year-old person at the time, who knows what happens? But that is heroin, and that was an addiction that took over this country. And what changed it for you and I is it's on every street. When I grew up, I was born in the 60s, but let's say 70s and 80s, heroin was done behind a dumpster with a needle. Heroin is done 10 years ago in your kitchen, and most kitchens in here have it. So what the problem was, that whole drug problem made it almost universal, bipartisan as well, by the way, because it impacts every quality of family and life, no matter where you come from. And it made some things better in the sense that everybody sees addiction as not down the street on some back road. But it's still the most significant thing in my 40 years, no doubt about that. The part I would insert right inside of that is fentanyl, which came around later, is the most lethal, deadly substance of all. Forget guns, forget everything. We have 6 overdose attempts every weekend inside the system. Do you know how much it takes to overdose? Underneath the fingernail. I mean, you can die with what you can get in underneath the fingernail. All drugs today can be liquefied. What does that mean? In a jail system, it's very hard to stop drugs from coming in. So what happened just 2 years ago? Opioids here, Suboxone here. Suboxone is a form of opioids that helps you get off of the addiction. In the 60s, that was called methadone, heroin methadone. Now we went opioids, Suboxone. It's basically a lesser form of opioids. But Suboxone comes in about every form you can get. So what was very common in our world, believe it or not, is you send me a Valentine's card, we open it up, we hand it to the person. That happens all the time. What you learned was every time the word love was written, lick it. It was all liquefied Suboxone. You can do it in any form now. And so you could have a Bible every time the word God, and so you would tell me that on the phone. So when the Bible was sent in to me, it had been obviously loaded with all sorts of different drugs. We eliminated, you can no longer send publications. You can't send cards. That's done electronically now. You can't do any of that. The point of it is the lethality of the drug today for all of us. And if you don't know someone, we all probably do, who have overdosed. The most common thing that happens is they go to rehab, go to treatment, get clean. The very next time that they relapse is very likely deadly because of what is in the drugs that wasn't in the drugs when we all experimented. And I'm talking about that is done. Today's drug problems are so lethal that it's unfortunately, I heard someone say the other day, a relapse used to be family pick you back up and get you back on track and try to get you help again. You're lucky if they're alive. It's a very, very common, difficult thing to do. And my hope is, kind of to summarize, that we all see it as an addiction and as a disease that needs treatment and significant help. I have Kyle and I were pulling in the parking lot, and I was bragging about one of my best friends, born and raised with me, my parents and his parents' best friends. He worked for me for 25 years. He's been sober for 11 months and 2 weeks. Can't wait. He's going to have his year here in just a few weeks. He works with us now. More accomplished in doing that than anything he ever did working there. So I just hope that we can find a way to live through what I call the fentanyl lethal crisis. What's a mess? Yes, ma'am.
So, other than educating us about all these things that some of us did not know, all these facts, what can we do just to normal everyday Nashville?
It's a great question. You know what? I'm an optimistic fan, although I'm an Auburn football fan. That's tough. I'm optimistic. They won last night. I still don't feel good about it. So I would say this. It just sounds corny. You know, someone raised their hand years ago. I was in Washington doing this panel about this one time, about 2 or 3 years ago, and I was doing this. It was on Facebook Live, and my mom loves to watch anything going on, so she's watching Facebook Live. I don't really know what that means, except she was watching it. And I was on this panel, and someone said, how in the world did you ever get the money to do this, to build this building? That was a question. The Attorney General of the United States is sitting right next to me. Loretta Lynch is sitting right next to me. There's 2 other people, we're only 4 of us on this panel. So when they asked me that question, I said, well, I lied. And so my mom doesn't like me to use those words. But the truth is, we need to force president, governor, mayors. I just mean this. I have a $116 million budget because it's much more expensive to house a person than to arrest them. People don't ever think that. They don't ever tell you that. Hiring more police is a great thing. Need more police. You might need more DAs and judges. But when you bring more people to jail, it costs a lot of money. If I sit here and told you, let's make it easy, $100 million budget. But I also have told you all morning, I don't think 30+% belong there. If tomorrow morning, hypothetically, woke up and those 30% went where they belong, why in the world do I need $100 million? You understand what I'm saying? Take the money. I mean, my own peers and colleagues do not like me saying this. There's no way you can say that problem needs to be solved in a mental health system that other countries have, and we planned to have years ago. If you remove that, and the police aren't called to the park for the naked man, and the jails aren't booking people, and I'm not housing people, then take the money away. If you take that money and move it over here and quit calling it defund, I'm not preaching to you, I'm just saying, then we can get somewhere. Take 30% of the police money and my money and DA's money. I mean, that's really what we're talking about. And then repurpose that, and then you have to have a system that supports that. Here's the other thing. Our country's got to condition itself differently. If we were in Australia, Italy, and you see a naked man playing in a park, that average citizen goes, wow, they need help. I promise you, it's research proven. In our country, you're not a bad person when I say this. Our first instinct is, it's got to go. And we're not bad people. We're conditioned to believe that's unacceptable behavior. It is. Can't be naked. Other countries go, oh gosh, here's the test I always use. You guys probably would way past the test, but most society would not. If you walk out the parking lot out of here today and you see someone with their head busted up and they're bleeding, I'll ask people, what would you do? And then what are you going to say? I need a what? Ambulance. We all say that. What do you say if the person's naked? Sing it. I don't care if you care tremendously about the person. Even if you stretch it and say, man, we need to do something helpful for this person, which you're not going to say. Even if you said that, and I'm the person on the other end of the phone, and I say, 911 going to help you, and you say, oh my God, we need to help this person. I'm from Italy. Do you know what I can do? It's an ambulance or a police car. And so our country has got to get conditioned. We've got to get the leadership, and then we got to move the money, and we've got to build what we promised in the 60s. And I hope to live to see it. And the sheriff shouldn't have to lie about it. That's what I tell everybody. So my mom won't be mad at me. So, well, thank you, John. I know it's plenty. Thank you very much. Bye.